about to start. We're about to start our webinar on leading through transformation, the important skills needed and how to make those changes that people might be a bit frightened of. People are just joining us now. If you'd like to say hi and introduce yourself in the chat room, we can see just where you are and find out your name just before we get started. Okay, so welcome. Today our experts will be looking at leading through transformation. And when you're looking to automate processes, what are the skills you need to lead your team? What do they hear when you talk about automation and new technology? What can you expect in terms of challenges, resistance, and how can you break down the fear of change and get buy-in? All crucial questions, and our experts today will be looking at what the answers might be. We'll be providing you with a best practice guide following the session, so drop any questions in the chat and we'll aim to pick them up, and we'll also be running a couple of polls, so please join in those. I'm Sue Beardsmore, and today with us we have Bruce Zivan. Bruce has first encountered the challenges of cash flow and collecting accounts receivable as a small business owner in the United States. He's currently VP Sales at Gamiti, an accounts receivable solution which helps companies accelerate their AR collections through workflow automation. Previously, he held lead sales roles with several companies offering technology solutions to improve processes in varied verticals. And with us also, Martin Kirby, Head of Credit at Business Stream, Scottish Water. He's an order-to-cash leader with extensive operational experience leading large-scale transactional finance teams in high-volume environments for global companies. He's worked with organizations in the finance shared services and credit management industry and won multiple awards creating top-class order-to-cash teams. So Bruce, first up.
Yes.
Hi. If I could ask you to give us a brief overview of Gamiti and the solutions that your company offers.
Sure. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Hello, everybody. As Sue mentioned, my name is Bruce Zivan. I'm the VP Sales at Gamiti. And also, as she mentioned, Gamiti is an accounts receivable collections platform, helping companies with moderate to large numbers of invoices on a weekly, monthly basis to automate the process of collecting on those invoices. We believe that our solution is the most efficient and effective way for a company to collect on their accounts receivable. And we offer what I like to tell our clients is we fill in the black hole between when you send out your invoice and when you collect on that invoice. Showing you every step of the process and giving you visibility into all the interactions that are going on along the way.
So you've worked with a variety of clients. You've got a lot of examples to tell us about. You know exactly the problems that people will be coming up against. So we'll go through those and maybe a few specific questions about Gamiti at the end. Okay, so we discussed the importance at one of our other webinars of having supportive leaders. So that was in the last panel discussion on personal development. But what sort of specific leadership skills and attributes do you need when automating? Bruce, would you like to kick us off on that? And then we'll come to Martin.
Yeah, I think it's, to me, you're looking at especially communication as a key skill, because you need to be able to, you're dealing with multiple stakeholders here. Usually the person who's dealing with this is probably like a controller, maybe a CFO, but usually let's say it's a person who's in that controller role, who's got a little more hands-on toward the accounts receivable and other accounting processes. And so, they need to engage the upper management to enlighten them as to why they need to budget for such an item, okay, and why that's important and how it's going to, impact the bottom line. And at the same time, they need to be able to communicate to the team that this is going to help them do their jobs better. It's going to make them more efficient. It's going to make them more successful at what they're supposed to do. Because what an account, we'll talk about it later, I know, but when an accounts receivable clerk, for lack of a better term, hears, when they hear there's automation coming, is, oh, they're going to get rid of us. And that needs to be like laid out up front. That's not why we're doing this. We're doing this to make you better. We're giving you superpowers with this tool.
Yeah. And the comms is important upwards and across the teams. It can't just be
100%, 100%, 100%.
Martin, what would you add to that conversation?
I'd echo that. I think the key traits, definitely need in this program to listen to the people. Generally, the best ideas are from the floor, so really make sure that they listen. Make sure the communication is correct as well. So the right tone and the right tense and the right detail. Quite often you see communication too detailed for the wrong level. So it's really important that you choose your audience and choose what you're going to tell them. I think you technically can't over communicate. I know a few of my colleagues may say that that's not quite right. You can over communicate, but I think if you can do that in the right manner, it doesn't have to be a formal thing. It can be an informal blog. It can just be a huddle point is what we would do. But so communication I think is really, really good. And I like Bruce's point is, giving them superpowers. I think what we like to tell them is we give them a cloak, and I've worked in organizations where we actually create a cloak for them, so they become a super user or a superman for that, and that sort of recognition and plays well into the pseudo of the guys as well. But I think the other thing more than anything else is the support, because you will need to be very resilient. The resilience is to me one of the key attributes. So listen, communicate, be resilient, and then you'll need a strong person to plan the way through it, because there'll be many, many bumps in the road, as we call it. But you'll just need someone that's really great at planning to plan you through that. That's what I would say.
When a manager's thinking about leading their team through automation, one of the things that they might worry about is their own expertise in the area, the technical know-how. What would you say to them about that? Bruce, what do they need to know before they get going?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they don't really need to know, in our case, let's say, we're basically telling them we're going to duplicate your current efforts. We're not looking to change the process. We're looking to make the process more efficient and more effective. So we have a fully customizable platform. So, your messaging, your tone, your pace of reach out, everything is something that, that you're going to put in. So it's not, technical knowledge is really not so huge. As Martin said, you need to be able to lead your team and basically show them. And one of the other things I thought about while Martin was talking was transparency. Be very, very transparent and tell them, I've seen this product. I've looked at this product. I think this product offers, a very, very a very, very user-friendly system. And we have, customer support who can help us if there's issues. So we're not just like plugging it in and leaving you alone. We're gonna, this is a process that we're all doing together to help the company, accelerate cash flow.
Okay, let's just do a little exercise, a poll now, because people will have had varying amounts of experience of doing things, and we've been listening to your estimation of what people really need. So this poll, if you could join in, which of the following skills are the most important for leaders of automation? And if you could rank them in their each skill on importance according to you, very important, important, or not very important. And we have communication, planning, resources, deliverables, resilience, technical understanding, expertise, understanding customer experience, and listening to employees. Now, you might not go through all of them. There might be just a few that appeal to you as being really important. But are they very important, important, or not very important? Just click where you think on communication, planning, resources, deliverables, resilience, technical understanding, expertise, understanding the customer experience, listening to employees, and talent planning. And we'll give people a couple of minutes to there's quite a choice there. I mean, some of those things, I think what you were talking about, Bruce and Martin, they covered those areas. It's just kind of picking them apart in little bits, isn't it? So we'll see how we do on that in a moment or two when people have filled in. I think we know what your top would be. I can fill them in for you, but I'm guessing that most of those things rank somewhere in being pretty important, but maybe not as much as communications. I'm giving everybody a clue there. We hope to see a good score on communications, very important. So let's see what we come up with in a moment or two. I guess people are taking the work very seriously. Okay. We'll see that in a moment, but let's while we're waiting for the result of that, we can look at it when it comes up. But when you talk about automation, Martin, in your experience and new technology, what do you think it is that the team actually hears?
I think it's a really good question. I think Bruce mentions it. You know, there is a fear factor from people. You know, replacing the man and machine, and although the message is to give them more time and more skills, and when we talk about automation, it's to do the repetitive jobs. You know, take the robot out of the human, get the human to decide the future. That's really what we're trying to do. But to bring that down to people who are working day to day is very, very complex. And I think some of the methods that we do these things in these days makes great sense. We tend to work a lot in agile sprints. So a sprint is a very short period of time. And what happens there is employees can get a touch and a feel of the product in a very short space of time. So you're not trying to do the old big bang approach and everything has to work together when you're doing sprints. And then that helps them and encourages them on the journey, because they can then start to see improvement and they can see the automation start to take away. But, you know, automation for me in order to cash would be very simply, you know, the best frictionless journey a customer could experience from the start of placing the order to the payment at the end of the order, and sometimes even further up that journey chain. But the least amount of touch in that journey chain has got to give the customer the best experience. And if you layer across a communication channel with that as well, making sure that the experience is understood and enjoyed, then that is the way. I think with teams and making sure automation works for them, I think the phrase that we always use is we need to walk in their shoes. So once we do these journeys, walk in the shoes of the people that are on the ground and making sure that they're comfortable with what's going on.
So briefly, you've talked there about the customer and making it frictionless, but presumably the easier, the smoother everything is, the more buy-in you get from the teams trying to work with it, because there are fewer obstacles to how they can work with it. Yeah,
I think less rework would be the buzzword around most organizations. The least amount of rework you do, the better it is, and we can call that frictionless or we call it something else. But first time is a key principle for many of these projects.
Okay, Bruce, you must have some examples, some client case studies about when people are talking about automation, what the team actually going to have to put it in place. What's your experience?
Yeah, for sure. There's you can almost guarantee there's going to be resistance. I think, you know, what we discussed earlier, you need to plan for that. You need to be aware of the way that your team works right now. You need to be aware of their pains and frame the discussion around helping them work through those pains, right? If I'm a company that's scaling up and, the number of invoices is going up, which means the number of past due invoices is going up, which means I'm asking my existing team to do more. Now, there's obviously everybody reaches a limit, but if I come in as a manager and say, hey, guys, I've seen a solution that can help us manage the increase in invoices without needing to increase the team. and you guys can do more and bring more cash, which is your job and how you get even incentivized, then that's what it needs to be. Look, you can only, so you have to be able to talk to them, as Martin said, you have to talk to them in their language. How many calls can you make? How many emails can you send? How many, keeping track has obviously become problematic for us. So we need to address it. We can't just allow it to continue this way.
Right. So you need to show people how it's going to work, because
exactly. And we've encountered numerous times where people bring the team into the process, the actual product selection process, so that they see it and they hear and they can ask questions and they can kind of feel it also.
Yeah. What would your advice be, or what's your experience of when you've got more or less all buy-in, but there's maybe one or two team members who really either don't get it or don't want to get it? Because presumably you need 100%. What do you do with the sort of?
Well, you don't need 100%, because at some point, as a leader, you need to make a decision that's right. The right decision for the company. Now, I think the best thing is, like, try it. Let it, see what this can do for us. See what this can do for you before you make the decision. Don't decide now that what's coming in a month or 2 months is going to be negative for you. Yeah. We're not here to replace you. We're here to help you and do your job better, and presumably before this is happening, there's either one of two things happen. The company's already scaled and they're behind, and there's already an overload of work falling on this team. Okay. Or the company is planning to scale, and hopefully those plans have been shared with the team, that the company is planning to scale, and they start to realize, okay, if we're going to go from 5,000 to 10,000 invoices a month, something's got to give. Yeah. And we need to figure that out.
Okay, well, we're hearing the same message, and you won't be surprised. Just to briefly go back to our poll: communication, top; planning, resources; deliverables, resilience. That's got 100% from people who voted. And then slightly dwindling: technical understanding, expertise, understanding the customer experience, listening to employees, and talent planning. But all pretty important. But I think you're demonstrating all over again that the comms is really important. Martin, have you got anything to add to that discussion, that conversation about what the team actually hears when you're saying automation? Any experience that you've come across that would help people to work through?
No, I'm in the same place as Bruce, and I like the question about what happens if you've got members of the team that don't want to join you. I think we have to sort of work really closely with them. We have mentors to sit with them. They'll have floor walkers to sit with them, to walk with them on the journey. So I think you have to really put more effort in. Generally, for me, I think you can take a lot of that out by transparency and showing your journey, where you're expecting to be, what time frame that's going to be, and sometimes you're able to show them a picture of the future of the journey. And we do a thing called model office, so we actually model what we're expecting it to be, and then open up the model office and show them what it's like in a model office way, and that gives a lot of comfort. And they can, once people can touch and feel, then generally they get a lot happier. So that they would be my experiences and understand.
Because you talk there about comfort. I mean, it's one of the things that I suppose comes naturally to quite a lot of us. We fear change. We're not that fond of change, maybe, if we've done something in the same way for quite a while. How do you break down that fear? We've already talked about, information and knowing it, and bringing the team along. Presumably it's something about a shared vision. I mean, you talked about the excitement, Bruce, and making people see that it's going to be good for them, but you presumably need that right up front to convince people.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big picture. It's also, there, I would hope that in this day and age that there's a big picture vision being shared with teams. Martin's from a larger organization. I've mostly worked in smaller organizations. But at the same time, I find, like I've always found as a leader myself, is that the more I can share about the bigger vision of the organization and how we fit into the bigger vision and how this potentially will fit into that bigger vision, right? Like I brought up earlier, we're scaling, right? We're scaling, or we've just made an acquisition where we're going to now go from 5,000 invoices a month to 10,000 invoices a month. We know our statistics. Half those invoices are going to go past 45 days. We need to be able to have a process in place to handle that. Okay. And, economically, it's much better to bring in automation than to bring in 2 more collectors. So, that this is why we're doing this. We're not doing this to we want to use the existing team, these people who've been with us and who've committed themselves to us up to this point to carry us through. And we've found this, system that's going to help us do that. And we're going to give it to you. We're giving you a tool. We're investing in you.
Yeah, sure. Martin, I know you've got a view. I'd like to hear your experience about sort of this idea of getting everybody to understand that change is constant, really, that you're not going from one thing to another and then you're going to stop there, but there'll be more changes down the line, and to embrace it. How do you go about making
I think
about that?
I think the brain, when it hears the word change, is very analog, so it automatically gets on the defense. When it hears the word debt, it always jumps into a very analog position. So I think we have to sort of try and change that a little bit. And then, so what we have to really try and do with change is look at what we're trying to do, look how we're trying to achieve it. And definitely, again, repeat, but share that vision with them, but also get them to buy into that, so get them to play a part in creating that as well, which is really important. Certainly in the embryonic stages of doing this journey, the more you can get them to play their part, the early parade, the early touch and feel is really good. But I think we have to really keep close to them and get them as a community that starts to support themselves on this journey as well. And to support that journey with where we expect it to be today and where we expect it to be tomorrow, and just be really transparent with them about that. And then measure them across the piece, because without the measurement, we won't know how successful we are. But the core key is planning. So if they can see where they're going, if we can help them drive down the road, we can actually then help them cross the road and cross the line, which is where we want to be. So that's what I would say. So succinctly, really work with the guys, bring them on as early as you can, stay really close with them, and have a real strong plan about where you're going, and share success. And I think sharing success at any one of the milestones you choose is really important as well. Let the guys feel good about the part that they've played and the part that they've done. You can't do too much of the celebrating success, in my opinion.
Right. And you talk about transparency and planning and communications, presumably no shocks. You don't just impose something, and you don't just say, this is what's going to happen tomorrow, everybody. It's that whole process. Yeah.
No black, what do we call it? No black holes or no shocks, please. Yeah. There's going to be bumps in the way, and there are going to be people that are not comfortable with the journey, and some people will want to check out accordingly, and that's quite right. I mean, that's what happens in the world. But okay. Generally, we don't see too much of that. So.
Bruce, I saw you smiling. You obviously agree.
Yeah, no. I think it's really important. It is a process. I mean, we're certainly from the sales side of business, right? We know that the company evaluation is a process. It's not just, they don't just look by. I mean, I wish, but they don't. So it's not like going to the grocery store. So it's not an impulse buy. It's a plan. And so you would hope that as they're doing that, it's being discussed. So there is no blindsiding. There is no like, hey, starting tomorrow, we're doing this.
Sure.
The type of communication you need is collaborative communication, not dictator communication where you're saying, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening.
Thank you. Well, in a moment, I'm going to be asking the pair of you to come up with a few examples of the kind of pushback and challenges that people can expect and what you've seen happen about them. But very briefly before that, a quick poll. And I think if you've done your job right so far, I think we know what the answer is going to be. But how important is frequent communication during automation projects? But it might be interesting to see if it is on a sliding scale or all there at the top. So 1 is unimportant and 5's extremely important. So given what you've heard, where would you put it? Everybody out there, just right at the top, or do you think there's a scale you might want to think about? I'm sure we'll get the results for that in a moment. And I will be coming to say, okay, automations, big projects can encounter challenges. You've talked about bumps in the road, but also pushback. What are there some specifics that leaders can expect and prepare themselves for? Bruce, have you got any examples you could share?
Look, I mean, I think we've touched on it here. You need to expect, as Martin did say, there will be pushback. There will be pushback, certainly from the team themselves, from the collectors themselves, as it regards, let's say, AR automation. So you can expect pushback, and you can preempt that, what might happen by, bringing them into the process, being transparent, establishing a culture of collaborative communication, collaborative work, incentives for adaptation, and using the system and things like that, motivational ways. So yes, you can definitely expect that, and you can expect that there will be people who will drag their feet even when it's been decided, and you need to address them as well, and work with them and bring them into the process carefully and gently, so that they can work with the system. I think the people who are doing that are the people who are having success with it. If you leave it and you ignore it, or you decide to clash with it, you're not going to have the same level of success.
So would you say in some cases that actually leaders need to develop some different sides of their skills to bring the team on in a great project?
Sure. I mean, these are people processes. Collection is a people process, and the way we built the system and the way the system is delivered is a people-centric process, and that's very, very important. And you would hope that your leaders are people-centric as well, in terms of kind of bringing everyone together and showing them each of the steps and showing them how to use the product, and relating what they decided, how they decided, and that they were thinking about them when they were deciding about this. These kind of skills are hopefully most of your leaders have it, and they're going to need to be on it through periods of change, as we're well aware.
Thank you. Martin, have you got an example, something that's happened that you've had to work through, or you've seen teams work through, that would be good examples for us to listen to today?
Yeah, sure. So we for the last year have been on a transformation journey where we're changing all of our billing systems. So quite a really, really useful, still in the process, still in part one of that, over 500,000 customers. So we have to be very precise about which stages we go through. So we've been going through that. And one of the things that we did initially was to get all our subject matter experts into the program. And we utilized other people to fill their existing day jobs. And that was really good because they felt really, really good about that. But the overall skill for me as well in this is leaders have to start to turn more, or certainly develop, if they haven't got the skills, more into coaching mode. There's a lot of coaching mode required when you're trying to take your teams through this, and not always does it go right. And I think what you really start to see is the catalyst within the teams to try and make the software work. So sometimes once it arrives and it doesn't quite work, what you start to see is people then starting to make it work. And I think that's the real key win-win, because once they start to make it work, then they'll start to plan it and start to work it through. So in our situation, we wanted to, so we asked the team what they wanted to do, and they wanted to check every single bill that we send out, make sure it was absolutely correct. So the customer didn't have any failings, or the customer journey was always going to be really good. So our core competency is always about the customer. So you can imagine, with the sort of volume of bills that we're generating, that was a fairly big practice, but that worked really, really well. So we took that on board and started to validate everything going out the door. So yeah, so coaching is really number one for me, skill in these situations. And if you haven't got it, then go and get it, because you'll need plenty of it.
Briefly, before I just ask a few more specific questions about Gamiti of Bruce, how important is buy-in from the other stakeholders? I mean, we've talked about leading the team, but Bruce, briefly, how important is it to get everybody involved on board?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's it's huge. I mean, clearly, like, you're going to need to get your financial stakeholders on board. If you're not the financial stakeholder yourself, you're going to need to get others on board so that they're ready to sign off on the POs. And other stakeholders within the company. For us, that's also a big deal, because it does, our platform does improve communications, not just within the small AR team, but internally as well, with salespeople and with with shipping departments, whoever it is, who are affected by financial aspects of the customer relationship. So yes, absolutely must. Is it crucial to get their buy-in? Do they have to sign off on it? Maybe not, but they need to know that this is happening, and they need to know that it's benefiting them as well as it benefits the company as a whole.
So that massive comms exercise. Right, let's come to Gamiti. How long does it take to get the automation solution in place, would you say?
Yeah, once somebody's made the determination and signed off on the PO, we get to work with them immediately, and it generally is around 4 to 6 weeks maximum. Again, a lot of it's depending on the customer themselves and how much commitment they can make to making meetings multiple times during a week. But we generally are looking at 4 to 6 weeks with multiple meetings to handle the basics of integration and creating the workflows.
So there's obviously other companies out there as well, but what type of companies does Gamiti fit best? You talk about
it's companies, as I said, who are dealing with a critical mass of invoices on a regular basis, whether it be weekly or monthly. And obviously as it gets into, let's say, 1,000 or more, it's really becomes crucial. Between, let's say, 100 and 1,000, it can be very beneficial, but when it gets at like 1,000 level, it becomes crucial. So, our clients are from manufacturing, from distribution, from shipping, logistics, and business-to-business services. People who are billing on a recurring basis, whether it's due to delivery of their services or delivery of their products.
Okay, and what's the initial process? You've talked about meetings and things can be done 4 to 6 weeks, but what's the process of getting started with your platform?
Yeah, again, once we engage and create a working agreement, the first step is to connect to either the ERP or the accounting system. We have a way of bringing data over that involves less work from the IT team. It's a much more straightforward data upload from the ERP or the accounting system. So that's the first thing we do, is we set that up. 100% success rate, by the way, regardless of the system. So that's something to our benefit. And then once that's set up and that's been tested, and we know that we're able to upload the data on a regular basis and gather the customer information from the ERP or the CRM, and pick up the invoices themselves so that we can attach them, then we work with the stakeholders to create the workflows, the emails, the verbiage, etc. That usually doesn't take very long. That's something that can be done, and they can be edited on the fly anyway. And then we're ready to flip the switch.
Okay, so talking about your platform will obviously make people be thinking about what they need to be thinking about if they're going through automation. So, but what metrics does your particular platform provide?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we're tracking all the basic AR metrics, DSO, which is days sales outstanding, a big accounts receivable metric, telling you like how far behind people are. And we have a dashboard with an aging bucket, and the total accounts receivable, and you can then slice and dice all the information by collector. So it's not just, you're looking at an overall picture, but you can also look at each collector, their accounts, and how things are progressing with their accounts.
Thanks very much, Bruce. So that's a brief spin through your platform. Martin, just before we go, I'll give you, we were talking initially about getting other stakeholders buy-in. How important do you think that is? Very briefly before we go, what's your view?
Important, and to make sure that you get that right, and in organizations where you're doing big transformation projects like we are, then there has to have the right level of sign off. So from steer co to design co, then down to even then once you're live like we are, just you're looking at priority, CR priorities, so fixed priorities, and you've got to get the right buy-in across the teams to agree those priorities, because what I'm sure all mine are number one priorities, but I'm sure all another teams is number one priority. So you have to get a certain sense of responsibility as well, and sometimes you just have to step back, knowing that it might be better to get the customer the bill perfectly rather than sort of post it to the system in Bruce's example. So you have to get that structure really, really understood and really in place, and never forget your procurement person, because they will be the one that needs to start counting the beans to make sure that the business case washes its face, as we would say, and doesn't overspend, because it's very, very easy to give an instruction to fix something and then not realize it's not within the boundaries of the project.
Thanks very much indeed. So thanks to Bruce Zivan from Gamiti and Martin Kirby. Thank you both for joining us. Thank you for joining us. And for more information on membership and courses, go to the IFOL website. This webinar will be available on demand on the IFOL website from tomorrow. Please share. We'll send a link to top suggestions from today and a PDF best practice guide. Before we go, please take part in our current finance leadership research study. The aim of the research is to understand what current finance leaders are focusing on, what their strategic priorities are. All respondents who fully complete the survey will be entered into a prize draw to win one of 3 $50 or £50 Amazon gift cards. So thanks, Bruce. Cheerio.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Bruce.
Thanks again for
Thank you
joining.
very much. Thank you
Goodbye.
both.
Take care. Bye. Bye.